talk about the year of an actor in terms of the calendar. One thing I do want to say about this section is that this kind of stuff changes all the time. Just like with anything else in acting, the rules are always changing, everything's evolving. So take it with a grain of salt and just keep up on all the latest industry trends. It's going to be very, very important. So here's what I mean about keeping up with the calendar and how things can change. It used to be, for example, pilot season was shot between January and April, or January, April, March, April, May, April. And between those months, every pilot, every first episode of every new show was shot in those months. Then after about 2006, 2007, when the strike happened, that started to change. And then also, too, with the inclusion of cable television. Some of you might not remember this, but it used to be that you had your 3-4 major networks, CBS, NBC, and you had a couple of cable networks, and then everyone ran television from the fall, the spring, and then it used to be in the summer, there was no TV. It was all reruns. So, I used to be a big fan of Dallas. Dallas would come on, and then over the summer, you'd catch up and watch the reruns, syndication season. Well, what happened was you had networks like TNT, TBS, and USA, eventually AMC. They started piloting or testing out the idea of, well, we're not big enough networks to compete with NBC and the shows that they put on there, but they're not really doing anything over the summer, so let's try running some original programming then. And then all of a sudden, because people had already seen the reruns and they wanted to see new material, we saw the rise of the cable television TV series really, really start to take off, which has led to the unbelievable amount of work that we as actors get to work in and see in today that just didn't exist before. But nowadays, all the pilots aren't shot from January to April. You still have a majority of the pilots shot in that time, but now pilots are kind of shot all year long. So you used to have a whole bunch of actors that would go to LA just for pilot season, but you don't really see that happening as much anymore since it's become a year-round event. What is the calendar? How does it work? Let's start with January. So, like we just stated, in January is the start of pilot season. Now, for those of you who are just beginning actors, it won't be the busiest time for you blah, 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 blah. Now, for those of you that are newer actors, it won't be a busy time of the year for you, January and February specifically. Usually that's the time when, for the pilots, the networks are trying to get the major celebrities attached to the project. So usually they're only going for the lead roles in January, February. The major series regulars, that are part of that supporting cast, they're usually getting cast in January and February. And then what you'll see is in March and April, that's when a lot of those, guest star, co-stars, a lot of those recurring roles, that will start opening up, and then your season might get a little bit busier. Also keep in mind in January, the winter college season starts. So you have all the college kids from SCAD, Kennesaw State, Georgia State, and they're all back during this period of January and February. They're going to be, doing some of their smaller projects, starting to cast some of their main projects in terms of their short films. So keep that in mind, because there's a lot of good opportunities to pick up some work, albeit unpaid, but it's a good way to beef up your demo reel. So that's January and February. March and April are pretty interesting months for actors. Like I said, if you're a newer actor, this is a good time for you during pilot season, but also too, all of those shows that start to air over the summer, March and April is when they start going into production. So shows like The Walking Dead, all those big summer hit shows, they actually start ramping up in March and April. So that's something you're going to want to keep in mind for, especially if you're doing workshops and trying to catch a casting director right before the start of that season. Know that a lot of those summer shows start in March and April. So January, February, if they're not too swamped during pilot season, might be a good time to get in with them right before production starts. Another really great thing about March and April, aside from the start of the summer television season, is that for a lot of the colleges, the seniors in undergrad and a lot of the grad students, this is when they start casting a lot of their thesis projects. This is pretty good because the thesis projects are going to be much better funded. Generally, well, not generally, always, these kids are much more serious because their ability to graduate is going to depend on this project oftentimes. And usually, because it's going to be one of the bigger budget projects that they do the entire course of the time there, it's kind of, they're going to, how do I say, it's going to be like their calling card, their portfolio piece. So they're really, really going to be determined to make that look the best that they can, especially if they've gone through 4, or in some cases 6 to 8 years of, production school, because now they're going to be ready to start working and they're going to be a little antsy for that. So March and April is a really, really good time for that. May is an interesting time of the year for the actor. Actually, it's a really crazy time in production in general because May is when the upfronts happened. So, what are the upfronts? Basically, all of those pilots that we talked about from pilot season, they take all those first episodes and they put on a huge 3-day event. Actually, I think it's a week now. But it's called the upfronts. So all the networks line up all these top shows that they're getting ready to air. They have all these celebrity comes and do little presentations because they are putting these shows on for the advertisers. Little known fact, the advertisers determine what shows get put on for the following season. So for example, if you have a great drama about fill in the blank subject, but Coca-Cola doesn't like it, and none of the other advertisers are saying, oh yeah, we'll buy ad spots on your show if that show airs, that show's not airing. It literally comes down to what advertisers are sitting in the audience going, oh yeah, I'll put a Coke ad on that commercial, I'll buy ad space on that. That's how shows get chosen. So keep that in mind. Unless it's a major show like an HBO show, because they're not TV. They're HBO. Now, the reason that upfronts are important, aside from the fact that all television for the next year gets decided in terms of all the new shows, it also is kind of the tipping point in when we get to see what shows are going to get canceled for the following year, which leads us into agent season, which is right where we are getting to walk into right now. If you are looking for an agent, this is the best time of year, May and June. Here's why. Those upfronts that we just talked about, let's say this year, it just turned out because of all the stuff that we've been experiencing the last 4 years, or let's simplify it, let's just say the last year. All the shows are going to be medical shows about COVID, okay? Or there's going to be a heavy influx. 3 years ago, there was a huge influx of sci-fi shows. After 9/11 happened, there was a huge influx of war shows that happened overseas, shows that had to do with Middle Eastern people. And what happened was when all the agents were looking at all the new shows that are coming, they look for those trends. And they're like, oh, okay, well, it looks like this year everybody's going medical drama. Do I have enough medical people on my roster that I can submit for that, since that's where the money's going to be coming this year? Or it's like, oh my gosh, this year it's all post-apocalyptic stuff. Everything is Walking Dead, everything. I need to make sure I have people on my roster that I can submit for those roles. So, May, check the upfronts. I like to go to futoncritic.com. Futon, like the little sofa bed. They usually have a list of all the shows that get picked up and a little bit about what was said about the show during the upfronts. And then you can start amassing a list. What shows are going to be filming here in Atlanta? What are the types of shows? Does it seem like there's a specific category or a trend that is leading really heavy this year? If so, maybe you want to update your headshot. If you're like, wow, man, this post-apocalyptic thing, I need some kind of like end of world headshot because there's like 10 of these shows this year, now would be the good time to do it. Submit that to an agent. The agent's going to look at it and go, oh my God, there's so many post-apocalyptic shows. I need this guy on my roster. Let's call him in for an audition and see how he does. It's really, really critical. They're going to go through, whoever the agents are going to go through, whoever hasn't booked that year for them or, in 2 years, this is probably where those separation letters are going to start coming. Where they're clearing room off their roster so they can make room for new talent that's going to fit what the industry is going to be asking for the following season. So that is May and June. At the end of June, beginning of July, and this has shifted a lot over the years, it's the beginning of production for the fall season. It used to be production for the fall season didn't start till like August and end of July, but now it's like the day after July 4th production is on. Not this year because of COVID, but the year before that, it was the last week of June that productions had started. These are all the TV shows that are going to start airing in October, by the way, just to give you a heads up. So you can go through your list, see what all the fall season shows are, start hitting that up in your targeting in terms of your marketing for your casting directors, producers and studios and networks and stuff like that, and have that idea there. July, like we said, the full season starts sometimes in July. Usually this happens in August. In August, production's already in full swing. You have your college kids starting to come back. So you'll have August and September, some of these newer college productions, the in-class assignments versus some of the short films. You have some students that have already prepped and got their films ready to be made, and they're ready to start shooting in September and ready to go. So those are going to be like your upperclassmen, your grad students. So that's just a good opportunity to pick up some work right there. So that brings us through the end of the summer. We're now in September, October. Everything is in full swing in terms of productions. There's still going to be some pilots now, like I said, because they're going to be scattered throughout the year. So some pilots will be shooting then. But the other next big date is going to be around October, November. This is more for studios, but this is something, if you're an astute actor, you'll probably want to keep an eye out for. Normally in October, November is when the writers are pitching their pilots to the studio. So they're pitching it, and then that's when the studios are deciding what projects they want to greenlight for pilot season. So if you have like favorite writers that you love their work, you'll want to follow up with that so that if you find out that like David E. Kelley is shooting a new show in Atlanta and you found out it just got greenlit, you can start working preemptively to find out who's going to be casting it, what studios that going to be working. I'm going to start sending my marketing material to them now. Like if it was a Walking Dead thing and normally I'm like this, then I'll start making sure that I'm just like slickly sending marketing materials to either that production office, the casting office, just so they can get used to seeing my face, so that when my face in terms of a headshot or a demo reel or an audition comes across them, they're not saying, I don't know that guy. They're saying, oh, there's something familiar about that guy. So keep that in mind. So that brings us up to October. Once October and November hit, this is when production for the winter season starts. So all the shows that start airing in February, those shows start filming now. Or not now, but in like October. And then also too, that's when the fall season of shows starts to air. So keep that in mind. And then that brings us to November. November's and December are going to be the two slowest times of the year. This is agent season part 2. This is the second best time of the year to try to find an agent. Everything in the industry is slowing down. You got Thanksgiving in a couple of weeks. Then you only have like 2 or 3 more weeks of work. And then after that, everything is shut down for the holiday break. So it's a really, really, really good opportunity to start trying to get another agent at this time. Start doing your agent workshops in October. Start sending your materials out to them. Make sure your reels, your headshots are prepped. That's the time, October, and also April and May, so that when, that time hits, you're ready to go and you're not like scrambling trying to play catch up. And then after Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or Festivus or whatever holiday you celebrate, that brings us right back to January, and the calendar starts all over again. Hope that helps, guys. We'll see you on the other side.